6 months. Not a single call, text, or email from my parents. Not a "where are you?" Not a "happy birthday." I'd moved to Oregon without telling them. They hadn't asked where I lived in 3 years. Why start now? Then, last week, my phone lit up. Theodore wrote us. I stared at the name. It felt like it belonged to another life. I picked up on the 4th ring. "You need to come home next weekend." No hello, no "how have you been?" Just an order. "Why?" Pause. A breath that sounded like irritation. "Your brother's engagement dinner. Isa's parents want to meet the whole family. They're very traditional." So that was it. Not a reunion. Not concern. A seat filler. A daughter-shaped prop. "I won't be there," I said. Silence. Sharp now. "What do you mean you won't be there?" "I mean exactly that. I have other plans." "Delaney, this is important for your brother's future. They're high-profile people. It'll reflect badly on us if you don't show up." There it was. Us. Never me. "I moved to Oregon 6 months ago. I'm not flying across the country for a dinner I wasn't even invited to until now." "You moved to Oregon without telling us? You didn't know where I was before. Why would this be different?" His voice dropped low. "How dare you move without telling your family? What's your address?" I almost laughed. "Do you even remember my last one?" "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point. You're not asking because you care. You're asking because now it's inconvenient not to know." "Delaney, this isn't how families work." "No," I said, "but it's how ours always has." Click. I hung up. No tremor in my hand, no doubt in my chest. The first text came in within minutes. Then another. Then my mother. Then Callum. I turned off my phone, made tea, stepped onto my balcony. The pine-covered ridge stretched behind my apartment. Quiet and endless. 6 months gone. Now they noticed. Not because they missed me. Because they needed me. And this time, I wasn't coming. I left my phone off for the rest of the night. Made tea. Stood on the balcony. The ridge behind my apartment was all shadow and pine. Quiet in a way my old life never was. 6 months of that quiet. 6 months where no one called. No one asked where I'd gone. Not a question about my lease ending. Not a birthday card, unless you count the one they mailed that never reached me. Not that they remembered the date. It wasn't new. Just confirmed. I still remember my last day in Arlington. The sun was unseasonably hot for March. Sweat ran down my back as I taped the final boxes. Jasper carried a crate of mismatched mugs. Ray pressed the flaps of my suitcase closed with her knee. "You're really not telling them?" she asked, swiping her forehead with her sleeve. "Not even a text?" I kept labeling the box in front of me. "They haven't asked where I live in 3 years. Why tell them I'm leaving?" She didn't argue. Just looked at Jasper. He muttered, "Still wild to me." Not to me. I'd been the extra in their family portrait for as long as I could remember. Quiet. Invisible. Acceptable only when useful. Callum was the sun. The reason the camera flashed. I was background. We loaded the last box into the U-Haul. The metal door groaned shut, locking in what was left of my decade there. I stood for a moment, not because the place held memories, because it held silence. The drive to Ashland was long, the kind that makes you forget where you started. City grit gave way to redwoods, crowds thinned to clearings. By the time we crossed into Oregon, something in my chest had started to loosen. The apartment waiting for me wasn't much. 1 bedroom, outdated kitchen, a balcony over the trees. But it was mine. Mine in a way nothing had ever been. I hung my own photos, arranged my desk exactly how I liked it, cooked dinners without anyone walking in, ignoring me mid-sentence. Jasper and Ray visited every other weekend. Grandma Edith called every week without fail. No one else called. Some nights I laughed about that. Not bitter, just hollow. Because the truth was simple. I had disappeared and no one blinked. That night on the balcony, with my father's voice still in my head, I thought of all the times I'd been invisible. When I was 8, I made the honor roll for the 3rd time. I set the report card on the kitchen table, right where my mother would sit with her tea. She glanced once. "Good job, honey," she said, without looking up from her phone. That same week, Callum got a C+ on a math quiz. He still got to pick dinner. The year I won first place at the regional science fair, I came home with a trophy almost half my height. My teacher had pulled me aside that morning. "You should be proud," she said. I was. I wanted them to be, too. At dinner, I set the trophy on the counter. My father's voice. "Let's not make a big deal out of it, Delaney. Your brother has finals." That was the year I stopped bringing awards home. By 17, I knew I'd be paying for college myself. I got into a state school on scholarship, worked 2 part-time jobs, stopped coming home for breaks. It was easier that way. Cleaner. I graduated early, moved into a shared apartment, took whatever freelance work I could get. My resume grew faster than my social life. I didn't mind. Work didn't forget me at the dinner table. Eventually, I landed a job at a cybersecurity firm in Seattle. Remote, flexible hours, full benefits. My boss said I had a knack for untangling the chaos other engineers overlooked. My savings account had commas. My fridge had real food. I was 29 and thinking about buying a house. So when my father's voice tried to pull me back into the performance, the same old role dressed as family duty, I didn't flinch. That call wasn't about me. It never was. The text kept coming the next day. From my father, my mother, Callum. Reminders turned to guilt. Guilt into threats. My mother's voice finally cracked through the silence. This isn't like you. You've always been so respectful. Your brother's counting on you. Isa's parents are formal. We need to show unity. Unity. A word they only pulled out for guests. I'm not going, I said. Don't be difficult. I'm not. I'm being honest. It's just one dinner. You can smile, say a few words, then disappear again if that's what you want. You mean like I already have? She hung up. Callum called next. Look, I don't know what's going on with you and Mom and Dad, but can't you just show up for me? For a second, I almost felt something. Almost. No, not this time. The day after that, my father called again. If you don't show up to this wedding, he said, you're out of the will. I let the silence stretch, like I was weighing it. Then, I make more money than all of you combined. A sharp inhale on the other end. You're bluffing. If you'd ever asked about my life, I said, you'd know I'm not. Click. He hung up. I stayed on the balcony that night until the last light drained from the sky. The quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The wedding was still weeks away. But I'd already decided I wouldn't be in the picture. That didn't stop the calls. Or the emails. Or the voicemails that stacked up in my inbox like unopened bills. I didn't answer. I didn't delete them either. I just let them sit. Reminders of a conversation I had no interest in repeating. Grandma Edith called the next morning. Her name lit up on my screen and I answered before the second ring. Hi, sweetheart, she said, her voice the same mix of gentleness and certainty it always carried. How's the air up there today? Cool and quiet, like I like it. We talked about the lavender I'd planted in pots along the balcony, about the deer that sometimes wandered behind the apartment. Then she paused. They asked me to call you, she said. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Let me guess, convince me to come back and play the part? They didn't use those words, but yes, your mother's been pacing, your father's in a mood, they're panicking. Because they miss me? She hesitated, just long enough for the truth to land. Because Isa's parents are watching and asking questions. I laughed, low and without humor. Of course, my value had finally surfaced, tied neatly to someone else's expectations. I'm not going, Grandma. I know, I wouldn't either. That was why I always picked up when she called. She didn't sugarcoat. She didn't rewrite history. She didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. She remembered my birthdays, sent postcards from her little trips, asked about my job, and actually listened to the answers. She was the only one who looked at me and saw more than what I could offer. I just wanted you to hear it from someone honest, she said. Not because I think you owe them anything. Thank you. Are you okay? I am, I said, and for once it was true. We stayed on the phone until my tea went cold. She asked about the house I'd been eyeing, whether I'd paint the walls or leave them plain. We talked about furniture, about fig trees, about anything but obligation. By the time we hung up, the sun was warming the windows, and I'd opened the mortgage calculator again. The days ticked by. The wedding approached like a tide I wasn't standing in. I worked, watered the herbs in my kitchen window, walked to the coffee shop down the block when the afternoons felt too long. Jasper texted me memes and photos of his cat. Ray sent me links to overpriced throw pillows. It felt normal. Then the wedding day came. I didn't mark it on my calendar. I didn't set an alarm. That morning, I laced up my boots and headed for a trail just outside Lithia Park. Tall trees, early spring wildflowers, a creek that carried the kind of silence you could actually hear. I kept my phone in my backpack. No curiosity, no wondering what was happening on the other side of the country. By the time I got home, the sky was streaked pink and gold. There was a missed call from Grandma Edith. I called her back before I'd even taken my boots off. Hi, sweetheart, you enjoying your mountaineer? Every second. She exhaled slowly. Well, the wedding happened. I waited. It was tense, she said. The kind of tension that looks polite on the outside but makes your neck stiff just sitting in the same room. Sounds familiar. She chuckled. Your parents did their best to keep it together, but your mother couldn't stop fidgeting. Your father barely spoke. Isa's mother kept glancing at the door like she was waiting for someone. Me? Yes, and when she realized you weren't coming, she asked why. I closed my eyes. What did they say? They tried different versions. First that you were sick, then that work had called you away, then that you were at some conference. All lies. Isa's mother knew it. You could see it in her face. What happened then? She pressed harder, asked why you hadn't been at the engagement party either, asked why she only found out you existed a few weeks ago. Apparently, she had a private conversation with your mother after the rehearsal dinner. No one knows exactly what was said, but your mother came out of it pale and quiet. I think she got read like a book. I almost smiled, not from malice, from the kind of satisfaction that comes when the truth finally catches up to the noise. What about Callum? He looked distracted all night, kept checking the door, never smiled for long. Isa looked upset through most of the ceremony. I don't think she bought the family portrait they were trying to paint. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table. The small space around me felt solid. Mine. They still thought this was about a dinner party. They couldn't see the years behind it, the omissions, the damage. But Isa's parents had seen it. A week later, Grandma called again. I was unpacking a box labeled kitchen, fragile, when my phone lit up. They're still talking about it, she said without preamble. Isa's parents? Yes. They've asked Callum directly now. Why you weren't involved. Why no one mentioned you until the last minute. Why you've disappeared. And? He tried to downplay it, but I think even he's starting to realize it's not going away. Isa's mother doesn't like being lied to. I set down a stack of plates leaning against the counter. Is the marriage already cracking? There's tension, she admitted. The kind that doesn't fade with a honeymoon. I didn't feel glee. I didn't want things to fall apart for him. But I did feel still, like watching ripples in a pond after dropping a single stone. They've started asking around, she continued. Your parents want to know who might have your new number, your address. They even asked me again. You didn't tell them, right? Of course not. I told them if you wanted to talk to them, you would. Thank you. They're nervous. Not just about you, about what Isa's parents might do, what they might say, what this might mean for Callum's future. They're worried about damage control, not about me. Yes, her voice softened. But they're starting to realize this doesn't just disappear. The way they treated you? It left marks. I looked around the kitchen, sunlight spilling across the counters, fresh dish towels folded by the sink, a window above the stove that opened to a row of pines. This wasn't just where I lived. It was mine. They're the ones who disappeared, I said. They just didn't notice until someone else did. She didn't reply right away, but the pride in her silence was enough. That night, I finished unpacking the kitchen and lit a candle by the sink. The flame flickered against the tile, small but steady. The house already felt like home. The envelope was plain. No return address. Just my father's blocky, careful handwriting, the kind he used on birthday cards when I was a kid, as if neatness could cover everything else. It sat in my mailbox like it weighed 100 pounds. I held it in my hand for a long minute. Cold air in my lungs. Metal taste on my tongue. I didn't take it inside. Instead, I walked straight to the backyard, to the fire pit. The match flared bright in my fingers. I dropped it onto the envelope. The paper curled in on itself, blackened, turned to ash. It was gone before the wind even caught it. I didn't need to know what was inside. Whatever it was, it wouldn't be for me, only for the version of me they still thought they could summon. The next morning, I signed the final paperwork for the house. My name on every line. No cosigner. No conditions. Just mine. Jasper and Ray texted about flights for next month. They wanted to see the place, help plant the first flowers. I'd already cleared a corner of the yard for tomatoes and thyme. That evening, I registered for a graduate course in digital forensics, not because I needed it, because I could. A small, stubborn act of ownership over my own life. 2 days later, the messages started again. Unknown numbers. Emails from addresses I didn't recognize. They weren't just my parents now. It was Callum, an aunt I hadn't spoken to in years, a neighbor from my childhood street, all carrying some version of the same thing. They just want to talk. They're trying to make things right. Family is important. I didn't reply. Then came the last voicemail from my father. His voice was different, not angry, not even cold, Flat. If you want to cut yourself off, that's your choice. But you're making a mistake you can't undo. I listened once. Deleted it. The wedding was over. But the ripples from my absence were still moving outward. Grandma called again. She didn't even say hello first. "They're getting desperate," she said. "How?" "They've started telling people you're unstable, that Oregon was some rash decision, that you've always been dramatic." I closed my eyes. The oldest trick in their book: shift the story, make me the unreliable one. And Issa's parents? They're not buying it. Issa's mother, she's still asking questions. I think she sees the gaps. I wished I could say it didn't touch me, that I didn't care what they told people. But the truth? It landed in the pit of my stomach like a stone. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about the way their version of me might harden in someone else's mind. That night, I sat on the living room floor surrounded by boxes I still hadn't unpacked. The walls of the new house felt closer than they had the day before. I brewed tea and didn't drink it. I scrolled through my email and didn't answer anything. It was the first time in months that the quiet felt heavy. The next morning, I changed my phone number. Only a handful of people got the new one. Grandma. Jasper. Ray. My boss. That was enough. I deleted the old voicemail box, wiped the old email account, cut every channel they had left. It should have felt like relief. Instead, I sat in the kitchen staring at the empty space on the counter where my phone used to charge. I thought about the way my father's voice sounded when he said "mistake you can't undo," about my mother's tight, scripted tone, about Callum's confusion. And for the first time, I wondered if they'd ever realize that the undoing happened years ago. 6 months later, my backyard was filled with voices. The smell of roasted corn and grilled peaches. Jasper manned the grill like it was a science experiment. Ray balanced a pitcher of sangria in one hand and a stack of mismatched cups in the other. A folding table overflowed with potluck dishes. Sesame noodles, a suspicious-looking casserole someone swore was a family recipe. A neighbor's golden retriever flopped at my feet. Across the yard, my coworker's daughter, Marin, tugged at my sleeve and handed me a plastic bracelet she'd made from string. "You're my aunt now," she said solemnly, "but the fun kind." "I'll take that," I said, slipping it on. Later, as twilight settled, someone from the next street over asked, "Do you have family back east?" I didn't hesitate. Not anymore. There was a beat of quiet, and then I smiled, gesturing to the table where Jasper was laughing so hard he'd spilled lemonade on his shirt, where Ray was dancing barefoot to a playlist I didn't even know I had. "But I have this," and I meant it. When everyone had gone and the yard was still, I gathered plates, folded chairs, and stood at the edge of the garden with Marin's bracelet still on my wrist. Fireflies blinked near the fence. The house glowed behind me. It wasn't perfect. It was better. It was mine. But even then, even with my hands in the dirt, planting thyme along the fence line, I knew they weren't done. You don't grow up in a family like mine and expect silence to last forever. And when the next knock came, not a call, not a text, but the sound of someone at my door, I knew exactly whose shadow would be on the other side. The knock was slow, measured, like whoever stood outside wasn't in a hurry, but expected me to be. I didn't move at first, just stood in the hallway, barefoot, the cool floor pressing into my heels. Another knock, then a voice. "Delaney, it's your father." The air in my chest went still. I opened the door just enough to see him standing there, suit jacket sharp despite the summer heat, expression set like concrete. "We need to talk," he said, not asked. Told. I kept my hand on the door. "About what?" "You know what?" His eyes flicked past me into the house, assessing, measuring. "I'm not inviting you in." He sighed, long and deliberate. "Issa's parents have been persistent. They think there's some misunderstanding. They're asking questions we can't keep dodging. Not my problem." "It is now, they've implied—" He cut himself off, like even speaking the words would give them power. "They've implied," I repeated. "Or they've figured out." His jaw tightened. "This is serious, Delaney. You're damaging your brother's future." I almost laughed. If his future depends on me pretending the last 29 years didn't happen, maybe he should rethink it. His voice hardened. "This isn't about the past." "That's exactly what it's about." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Your mother thought you might reconsider if you saw this." I didn't take it. "What is it?" "An invitation. To dinner, at their house. Just you, us, and Issa's parents. No cameras, no crowd, a chance to smooth things over." I leaned against the doorframe. "So, you want me to perform privately? before I'm allowed to perform publicly. That's not what this is. It's exactly what this is. The silence between us stretched. Somewhere behind him, a car passed, tires hissing on the pavement. "I'm not coming," I said. "You don't understand the position you're putting us in." "I understand it perfectly." His nostrils flared. "Fine," he said finally. "But when they hear the rest..." "What rest?" He looked at me for a long moment, like he was deciding whether to lie or tell a partial truth. "They've been asking about your finances, your job, your stability." I almost smiled. "And what did you tell them?" "That you're doing fine." He said it like it hurt him. "Then leave it at that." He stepped back from the door. "This isn't over. It is for me." I shut the door. This time my hand shook, not from fear, but from the effort of not slamming it. I didn't hear from him again that week, but I heard from Grandma. "They're getting cornered," she said. "Isa's mother asked to see photos from the last few years. Guess whose face is missing from all of them?" I pictured the albums, neat rows of images where I didn't exist, the gaps as obvious as a missing tooth. And she asked about it. "Your mother tried to brush it off. Isa's mother didn't buy it. Then she asked about your work, your degree, where you live. Your father kept changing the subject." That night, I pulled out my laptop, opened the file I'd been building for months without really meaning to. Screenshots, emails, dates, even a few voice memos. It wasn't for revenge. It was for clarity. Because I knew how they worked. Erase, rewrite, repeat. Not this time. 2 days later, I got an email from Isa's mother. It was polite, formal, but there was steel in every line. She'd like to understand the circumstances that kept me from the wedding and the engagement party. She'd heard differing accounts and wanted mine. I read it twice, then again. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I forwarded it to Grandma, to Jasper, to Ray. They all said the same thing. "Tell her." So I did. I didn't write a speech. I didn't dramatize. Just facts, moments. The 3rd grade honor roll, the science fair trophy, the C+ dinner, the scholarship, the years without a single holiday call, the sudden urgency only when it served someone else. I ended with one line. Showing up for that dinner would have been the performance of a family we've never been. Then I hit send. 3 days passed. Then a reply. "Thank you for your honesty." That's all I needed to hear. No threats, no demands. Just an endpoint. A week later, Grandma called. Isa's parents canceled the dinner invitation. I was stirring pasta on the stove. "What dinner?" "The one for next month. The casual meet and greet your parents were counting on to smooth things over. It's gone. They told Callum they're reevaluating." I stood there, wooden spoon in hand, watching steam rise. "Are you telling me..." "I'm telling you," she said, "that whatever you wrote, it landed, and your parents are furious." That night, the text came again. Not from unknown numbers this time, from my mother's phone. "You've made this harder than it needed to be. You've humiliated us. Call me." I didn't. Instead, I opened my laptop, checked the tracking on a package I'd ordered weeks ago, a set of raised garden beds for the backyard. They'd be here Friday. I pictured them lined with basil, rosemary, tomatoes, things that grow when they're tended to. Friday came. So did the garden beds. I spent the afternoon filling them with soil, my hands deep in the earth. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. Grandma again. "They know you talked to Isa's mother," she said. "Of course they do. They're saying you've poisoned the well, that Isa's parents will never look at them the same way." I pressed my palms into the soil, grounding myself. Sounds accurate. As the sun dipped, I wiped my hands on my jeans, looking at the neat rows in front of me. I thought about the last few weeks, the knocks, the emails, the demands, and for the first time I felt something I hadn't since that phone call months ago. Calm. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of boundaries. That night, I lit the candle by the sink. Its small flame swayed, reflecting in the tile like a pulse. The house was quiet, not the kind that feels like absence, but the kind you earn. I leaned on the counter, both palms flat, feeling the cool stone under my skin. Maybe this was the real ending, or maybe it was the start of something better. The next morning, sunlight poured across the kitchen floor. I brewed coffee, barefoot, the smell drifting into every corner. I didn't check my phone. Didn't wonder what was happening 2,000 miles away. Instead, I opened the back door and stepped into the yard. The soil in the new garden beds was still dark and damp from yesterday. I pressed my fingers into it. Loose, ready. It was strange how much that mattered, that the ground here would take what I gave it. By noon, Jasper and Ray had arrived. They didn't knock. They never did. "Got your text about the raised beds," Jasper said, stepping in with a bag of seedlings. "We brought reinforcements." Ray held up a flat of marigolds. "Color, because you're allergic to beige." I laughed. The kind of laugh that starts in your chest and actually makes it to your face. We spent the afternoon planting. Tomatoes, basil, rosemary, thyme. Marigolds along the edges, bright against the soil. Ray kept a playlist going from her phone. Jasper argued with her over song choices like it was a matter of life and death. When the sun dipped low, we lit the grill. Neighbors drifted over, drawn by the smell. A folding table appeared, bowls of pasta salad, fresh bread. Someone brought a peach cobbler still warm from the oven. The golden retriever flopped at my feet again. Halfway through the evening, Maureen ran up to me with another plastic bracelet. "This one's for special occasions," she said seriously. I slid it onto my wrist. Every day here is a special occasion. At some point, someone asked me, again, if I had family back east. I didn't hesitate. Not anymore. And just like before, I gestured toward the table. Jasper waving tongs like a weapon, Ray spinning in the grass to a song none of us knew, Marin showing off the bracelet she'd just made me. But I have this. When the last guest left and the yard was still, I stood at the edge of the garden. The marigolds glowed faintly in the dark, catching the last scraps of light. Inside, the house smelled of basil and smoke and peach cobbler. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to earn something that was never mine to begin with. A place at their table, a voice in their conversations, a face they'd remember without a reminder. I thought about how, in the end, walking away hadn't been the loss they wanted me to think it was. It was the gain they could never give me. 2 weeks later, Grandma called. "They've stopped asking," she said. "About me? Yes, at least out loud, but I think..." She paused, choosing her words. "I think they know they can't pull you back this time." I didn't answer right away. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I am," and I meant it. A month after that, I closed on a small cabin property just outside town. It needed work. The porch sagged, the kitchen cabinets had seen better decades, but the land backed into a stretch of forest where deer wandered in the mornings. Jasper helped me rip up the old carpet. Ray painted the front door a color she insisted was sunset coral, even though it looked orange to me. One afternoon, while sanding the porch railing, I found a letter tucked under the doormat. No envelope, just a single sheet of paper. It was from Callum. The handwriting was slanted, rushed. He didn't apologize, not really. He wrote that Issa's parents had been distant since the wedding, that the questions hadn't stopped, that maybe he should have asked more about what happened between me and our parents before it all blew up. Then, "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." I folded the paper once, then again, and set it in the drawer by the sink. Not to answer, just to keep. Because sometimes, even if it's too late, it matters that someone tried. That night, I sat on the porch with the candle again. The air smelled like pine and rain. I thought about how endings never come in one clean cut. They fray, they taper, they leave threads that might never be tied. And maybe that's fine. Because here, in this house, in this yard, I'd stopped waiting for them to tie them for me. 6 months after moving into the cabin, my garden overflowed. Tomatoes so heavy, they bent the vines. Basil thick enough to perfume the whole yard. Marigolds bright even in the morning fog. On Saturday nights, the folding table came back out. Neighbors. Friends. Marin with another bracelet. Laughter spilling into the dark. And every now and then, when someone asked me about family, I'd still say, "Not anymore." But inside, I knew the truth. Family wasn't where you came from. It was where you were seen, where you were remembered, where you chose to stay. One evening in late summer, as the sun slid behind the ridge, I stood at the edge of the yard, bare feet in the grass, bracelet on my wrist. The house behind me glowed soft and warm. It wasn't perfect. It was better. It was mine. And for the first time, I didn't just feel like I'd left something behind. I felt like I'd arrived. We've shared my story. Now I'd love to hear a piece of yours. Where in the world are you listening now? Share it in the comments. I'd love to know. Wherever you are, I hope you're safe, surrounded by kindness and in good health.